All right, give it up for Spencer. Film is a highly unique medium of storytelling that is so often written off as a less creative or imagination lacking version of books, when in reality, film has its own numerous merits, one of which is the ability to emotionally manipulate the audience using every single frame through conscious and subconscious means. I've always been a fan of the pre-production phases of movie making because I've always been a storyteller at heart. I found my strengths to be in writing and overanalyzing things to a borderline insane degree, so I only found it natural to dive into an analysis of how the visual aspects of film can enhance both the story and characters within. I decided to focus on a collection of 3 works by writer and director Edgar Wright and co-writer Simon Pegg, which is an homage to the famous Three Colors trilogy known as the Cornetto trilogy, featuring the movies Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End. These 3 movies are all often praised highly as being very creative in their visual storytelling, so it only felt natural to have them as prime candidates for this. I ended up purchasing the trilogy, and they've seen me mugging with the trilogy in my hand, and I watched each one 2 to 3 times, picking out screenshots that I thought would make for good frames for further analysis. I ended up with about 100 or so screenshots, which is way too many, but that just shows how good these movies are. I ended up narrowing it down to just a couple, which I used for my infographic, which was divided into 4 main parts, which focused on the color palette, the framing, the lighting, and the symbolism, as well as a brief mise-en-scène at the bottom, which refers to the composition and the arrangement of the objects in the frame. I also created a write-up, which ended up being about 20 pages long with supporting images as examples, which also focused on the same 4 aspects up there. While in these 2 products, I focused on the aspects themselves and then used examples to support them, I'm going to flip that around here and just show you some frames from each movie and then show which of these aspects can be found in those frames. For example, here in Shaun of the Dead, the parallel structure of these 2 shots shows the growth and a character arc of the protagonist, Shaun, through lighting, color palettes, and the composition. You can see a drab, depressing, just horrible colors in the first shot versus the last one where it's cheerful and bright and cheery and joyful. And the items in the first one are scattered around like a teenager's room in adolescence, while the last one looks clean and professional, which shows the overall arc of the character throughout the movie. In Hot Fuzz, you can see the color palette is corporate, kind of bland, blue, white colors, faded, which shows the depressing feelings his character is feeling at the moment as it sets him up. And he is placed framed in the frame away from the walls, sort of centered uncomfortably, which shows a general detachment from human interaction and just loneliness, which sets up his arc for the movie as well. In The World's End, interestingly enough, Arthurian symbolism is used very creatively to show the story of a rather tragic, depressing alcoholic. This Alcoholics Anonymous circle is an homage to the classic Knights of the Round Table, and the beer glasses here on the pub crawl are an homage to King Arthur's epic quest for the Holy Grail. This ironic comparison works to show just how twisted and warped this protagonist's view of the world is, and really highlights his addiction, solely through visual means without saying a word. Overall, I only analyzed 4 aspects in particular, but there's many more, and those are just visual ones at that. There's so much more in every movie, and a thoughtful filmmaker will put so much effort into every single frame they create, knowing that each one is a fragment of a larger work of art. And like any art, there is much more than just meets the eye on one viewing, and anyone can see it all if they look for it. Thank you.
Yeah!
Comments, questions?
How much time did you actually spend analyzing it and writing some of it?
How much time did I spend actually writing the paper itself?
Well, yeah, and analyzing for it.
I think that was most of the time. It wasn't all in one bulk. I didn't really time specifically how long it took. But the process I had was watching the movies and screenshotting it. Once I had all the screenshots, I worked with that to create the infographic firstly, and then using what I had in the infographic to expand on that in the final paper. It probably took me a couple weeks. It was a little longer than I was anticipating, but it wasn't too long.
Was there a particular reason that you chose Simon Pegg's movies?
Sorry, what?
Was there a particular reason why you chose Simon Pegg's movies?
I just love these movies. Simon Pegg might be my favorite actor, but these three movies here are just probably my favorites of all time. And I thought that they actually really got me into film a lot more than anything else I've ever seen. And visually, like visual film. So I thought they were good for that. Yep.
So out of the three movies, because they're all done by like the same directors and writers, did you notice any like continuities with the way they used symbolism throughout the movies?
Yeah, I did notice that. Besides just references to the other movies they did in their later ones, there were common themes of friendship, companionship, and also maturing growing up that are present in all three films. I chose not to focus on that for this project because I was focusing mostly on the visual parts of each one and how that worked to enhance the stories themselves. But there is a lot more on that could also be analyzed.
Was this your analysis, original analysis, or did you also use other people's analysis and just kind of tweak it to your own?
I used some others to figure out some of the framing and the themes and all that. I did use some others as reference, but mainly this is my analysis, yeah.